different areas. We do record, by the way, so that we also put it up on YouTube later on, so that you can watch it, the presentation. So the purpose behind the workshops, it's not meant to scare anybody, but it's also meant to say, man, when I did my PhD, when I did my master's, or when I was writing this particular paper, I wish I had people, a network, a community of people that I would, talk to and share ideas with. And that's often missing because everybody's just looking for a commercial element to the process of research and all of that. So I've made it a deliberate thing that my sessions are, I don't charge money for it. I purely do it for the love of it, so that, we empower each other to become better. And so each and every one of you is welcome. There's nobody here who knows better than the other person. I don't want to create another research committee where people feel like, oh man, I don't deserve to be here, or and I need to clarify that, so that we're all at the same page, that we are all here to learn and all here to empower each other. Ideally, I would have said, okay, let's go around the table, everybody introduces themselves and stuff like that, but we have far too many. So I think let's focus on the exciting business of the day, which is to talk about good starts and strong endings in academic writing. It's often used as a scare point. Sometimes you hear people say, well, if you don't, an examiner or a person who will read your paper will automatically judge your paper by the first 10 minutes of your paper. And as a result, we'll be able to know whether this paper is going to be a success or not. You've heard people say that. You've heard people say, you know what, just 10 minutes into reading your paper, I just lost the idea. I didn't enjoy what you were writing about. People can say all sorts of things about the starts and the endings that we are doing, particularly. And so the issue that I seek to bring to everybody's attention is that there is a way we can become better at this. And we can become better at this, and I'm going to show you some tricks I'm using. Once I started hanging out with a certain clique of authors and writers, is studying what others are doing. And by studying what others are doing, I make notes. I travel, I carry with me a notebook. And in the notebook, I'm making notes. After I read something, I say, okay, I like the way they ended their paper. I like the way they introduce this idea. And it not only applies to writing a thesis, it not only applies to writing a paper, but in any form of writing. The introduction plays a wonderful part in sharing and conveying the ideas that you're working with. So my hope, as we work together this afternoon, is that we can all become better. And we don't become better by just right now, you're good at it. You're going to learn, and we're going to help each other to improve and pick up these much needed skills that we're talking about. Okay, that's the long introduction. So I want to cover two things in summary today. The first are introductions. The second are conclusions, particularly conclusions, not just how do you conclude the paragraph of conclusion, but a concluding chapter in a journal or in a thesis. But introductions are important. So introductions, the way somebody taught me is that, so take for instance, I know we've got international people here. Take for instance, you are traveling between East London, where we are, to Port Elizabeth, which is some 300 odd k's away, between East London and Port Elizabeth. And then you sit next to somebody on a bus. And as you sit next to this person on a bus, you then say to the person, okay, I'm on the bus, I'm going to this place, awesome, I'm looking forward to it. Then you then say, okay, what's next is I'm looking forward to, company, somebody to converse with, somebody to talk to on the journey. And then as you are sitting and talking to the person, you start to notice that the person starts to give one-word answers, So how do you find the state of the economy? And the response is just one-word responses. Okay, tell me, what is your favorite hobby? And they're not answering. It just becomes an exercise in futility where you are the only person who's talking. And so this person who was teaching me says that this is how not to do an introduction. Okay, having it in a style where it's dominated by one person, which is you, and not trying to engage the other person. At the same time, you don't want a scenario where as you can converse, or as you converse with somebody, the ideas are all over. The ideas are all over. You talk about politics, you talk about the economy, you go and talk about this lady that has been in the news today, Mandlovu, they were calling her. You talk about all of these things. You want a refined idea, or a base from which you base your talk upon. And so that's one way of then looking at it, that what is happening is we want you to talk to people. And I then appreciate the value of the introduction, because the introduction is there to create the platform in which you can talk to people about what you are about. And what an opportunity that is, because a journal article is mostly 7,000 words, including references. So imagine the power of the first 120 words to these 7,000 words has got the potential to either make people read further or make them stop. And I hope people can read further. So if you've joined us, welcome. In the comments in the chat box, you will find that there is the presentation, so you can actually click on it and you'll be able to save it. And this is the presentation I'll be working on. So let's get into it. So for me, introductions are seeking to do 4 things. These 4 things are crucial because they are the 4 things that characterize the work that we do. We want attention. And whether you like it or not, and some of you may not believe this, but what I've learned in my years in academia is that it's all about attention. If you can get people's attention, people are likely to listen to you. People are likely to give you their time. People are likely to take you seriously, to say, okay, this is one guy that we can listen to. But when you look further, one of the things that's crucial about the challenge that often happens is that a lot of people miss this idea about attention. And a lot of people miss the idea about attention because they either have not focused very much into a clear thought and line of what it is that they want to do. So as you sit there, And as you start thinking about whatever research you're working on, ask yourself a question. If I'm going to be writing my master's, MBA, dissertation, or whatever it is, I need to get people's attention in the area and the issue that I'm writing about. And we're going to show you how to do that. Number two, don't forget to present the topic. Don't forget to present the purpose of what you are trying to do. Okay, so you can get our attention, but you then forget to focus on what you are seeking to achieve. I see it a lot. You do a lot of work trying to promote the literature. So and so argues this, so and so says this, so and so, and then we miss an important and crucial element of this literature, which is your voice, what it is that you are trying to achieve. And it happens a lot because sometimes people tell us we need to be modest, we need to, allow ourselves the platform and the chance to. So it's not always about us, give it to others, but don't forget yourself as well. And I think it becomes crucial because we forget ourselves often when we try to achieve this reductionist, deductive type of writing where we are trying to say this follows this, to try and convince people by arguments of what the literature is saying, and yet we forget the important voice, which is you. We need to connect with the audience. Now, the audience is bored. I don't know, and I've got some of my master's and PhD students here, and honors students as well. A question is often asked. Dr. Masha is here. I could ask him that. Dr. Masha, how many people do you think read or have read your PhD dissertation? Dr. Masha, are you going to take that? Okay. All right. Maybe he'll join, he'll connect later. Often I hear people say, well, don't praise yourself too much. Not many people read it. And it's true. The poor document gets stuck in a library somewhere. And at the odd chance when somebody is looking for, a certain, maybe a scale.
I think now I can answer.
Okay, go ahead.
Nobody. I've not had any comment from anybody.
Yeah. So people are likely more to engage with the work in the articles and so forth. So we are in trouble, colleagues. We are in trouble because the audiences that we are dealing with have got a short attention span. They are in the generation where they want to read things quickly, get to the point. I know one journal, the South African Journal of Psychology, has said, other journals can say, well, we'll give you between 7,000 and 8,000 words, including references. The South African Journal of Psychology has made it very clear, do not go beyond 5,500 words for everything. Get to the point. Tell us what your research is about. In fact, they even have a rule that the abstract should not exceed a certain threshold of words. So because we are dealing with a context of challenge, a context where people are constantly searching for other things that entertain them quickly, we must be able to articulate ourselves well and get the attention of our readers at the soonest so that we don't lose them. And when we lose them, it's going to be difficult for us to get them back. We need to also give focus to the logics of writing, which is what we're going to talk about a little bit later on, about what exactly is meant by the logics of writing. So what I'm going to share with you now, to make it interesting and fun, are 5 tips I have learned from introduction writing. And you can actually do an entire workshop just on how to write an introduction, a whole day workshop on how to write an introduction. This also applies to human interaction, maybe. Hi, I saw your name on my Facebook. Okay, get to the point. What do you want? Point of clarification. Igniting interest in the conversation. Well, because of the way we've introduced yourself, let's continue talking. I think I'm interested in getting to know you and conversing with you. So those are all interesting ideals that we could pick up. So I want to share with you 5 lessons that I have learned. Make your notes, your points of questions or clarification, but I want to make this practical. I want to show you how some of these interact, particularly in the way we write and the way we work as academics. Okay, let's start with point number 1. Point number 1 gets to the point, okay? What do we mean? Get to the point, especially in the introduction. I want to show you this paper here. So this is a little exercise I do in trying to get better. Of course, you the higher that you pitch, the better, because if you go for your big A-rated journals, it's big, concise language that is used there. But here's an example of a recently published paper, which is just, I think, a few days old, published in the South African Journal of Human Resources Management. Decent journal, publishes a lot on SA, HRM, African HRM related issues. Great stuff. So this is a paper written by Sixpence, De Bruyn, who else? Busin and Mtombeni, about the anchoring of human resource management to sustain employee performance at the Johannesburg Metropolitan Municipality. Interesting paper. So this is what you do. For every paper that you see with an introduction, remember, you want to get better. There's no harm in you finding words that you like. I'm going to show you a couple of words that I think are interesting words in this paper. But let's start with some strengths in the paper. So the first thing that they do, pick up what they do. They are talking about human resources management, okay? And then they abbreviate. Quite good, because they're going to be using this word human resources management quite a lot. So what do they decide to do? Let's abbreviate it from the onset. I thought that was great. But look at their first sentence. Their first sentence. Human resources management is strategically positioned to drive employee performance. Full stop. Beautiful. Not ambiguous. Straight to the point. I think the added interest there are words like strategically positioned. Instead of saying the human resources management function is an important function to the organization that can be found to have its links with employee performance. So here's another trick. If you want to write good introductions, a starting point could also be try and speak your introductions. What do we mean? You can try and actually start conversing and speaking about what your introduction is saying. And you'll actually find the more that you're struggling to breathe as you are speaking, it could mean that that introduction is rather a little bit long. Look at this beautiful start. Human resources management, abbreviated HRM, is strategically positioned to drive employee performance. They end it there. Short, sweet, to the point. Look at the next line. And this is the other thing about introductions. The next sentence, the sentence before and the sentence next should all be pointing towards and assisting you in writing better arguments. So I'm not expecting the next sentence to be out of place. I'm expecting the next sentence to be merely continuing the great start that has happened with this first sentence. So here goes. It is even more crucial. By saying it is even more crucial, they are saying, in as much as we have built up the first sentence by putting it at a, if you like, a 20% leverage point of importance. It will be even more crucial if we take the next sentence to a 35% leverage point, and that's build up of ideas. So they are now taking the next sentence and the next idea, but they bring in a crucial element, which is a context element. It is even more crucial within municipalities. So already I know, so why would they pick municipalities? Why wouldn't they pick multinational corporations? They pick municipalities because they are saying, okay, we want to cut to the chase. We don't want to waste time by going around and round and saying blah, 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 blah. We want to know that we are working within a municipality context, and here is the line that confirms it. That's the next sentence. Then the other thing that we can do in introductions is what we call the buttressing of the argument. So to buttress is to add additional weight. Don't add too much weight, just add the right weight, the right precision of weight. And this is what they do in that sentence there. The municipal context, remember, they're still harping on that, requires HRM solutions that are peculiar to the public sector environment. And remember, they are adding weight. So what do they do to add weight? Check out what they do. They add these sources so that you don't say, where are you basing all of this? You know, they are adding weight. Okay, so as you write your introductions, as you write your literature reviews as well, ask yourself, should I add weight? How much weight should I add? Not too much, not too little, but just enough weight that the point is made and we can have a point which we can go on. Guys, for me, this is fascinating because we've spent almost 5 minutes right now just looking at the first 2-3 sentences. And that's what writing should be. Writing is not about you just waking up at midnight and say, by 6 a.m., I want to write this article or I want to finish this chapter and send to my supervisor. Writing is about thinking about each and every sentence that you're writing and asking yourself, how does this sentence add weight? How does this sentence aid the arguments that I'm making? Look at what they then do. They've added the weight and then they put the word therefore. The penny drops. What does this all mean? So therefore is a nice way of summating to say, based on what we have said. So you can't start a sentence with therefore because you've said nothing. So when you start, when you have said something, you are then given the leeway and the platform to say, okay, I have said something here. Because I've said something, I can use the word therefore. And remember that therefore is continuing or confirming what you have done. And what have you done? Well, for starters, you've not written long-winded sentences. For starters, you've taken time to actually make sure that you are purposefully and deliberately looking into the sentences that you're writing. And I think it's crucial and important for us to do that. And then what do they do? Look at that last sentence in the first paragraph. The last sentence in the first paragraph says, the knowledge of contextual challenges thus enlightens practitioners on existing gaps and motivates them to take remedial action by developing relevant policies. Now, I don't know what the rest of this paper is about, but I can tell you that last sentence is kind of telling me the angles of what they are trying to do. Here's another little tip as you write. Somebody just mute. I think you've just joined us recently. Please just mute. There's feedback coming from your computer. Thank you. Wonder who that is. Please just mute everybody. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. And so what we then do here in this paragraph, what we have in this paragraph are all the little necessary little ingredients around what academic writing is about. It's about thoughtfulness. It's about engaging with everybody's ideas. But at the same time, I'm going to show you the crucial element a little bit later on. It's about positioning your ideas. Now, so that we also have some form of interactive engagement, I also think there are problems in this paragraph. I would like to ask you to help me. So please, let's everybody. Nompumelelo Mbedu, please let's mute. Okay. I also think there are problems in this paragraph, in this introduction. Would anybody like to take a go at some problems that are there? Let's look at the next line. What do you think is also problematic that you can pick? And by the way, the ability to be able to okay, unfortunately I will have to remove you from the session because there's still feedback coming from your yeah, please let's mute. Okay, Karen, you've got your hand up. What also is problematic in this introduction?
Hi, Prof. I just have a question. I'm not really sure if it is the correct thing.
Okay.
Yeah, something that's also a bit confusing me when I'm writing. Once I have abbreviated, do I need to, can I just continue using the abbreviation, or would I need to, at some point, start with the full word again? An example of the second paragraph where they've written human resource management.
Okay, so let me stop you there. You've answered the question, Karen. Remember they've declared here what human resources management means, HRM. But guess what they do? They go back in the first sentence, they go back to writing the full word, yet they've declared what it means. You've picked it up. Once you declare that this stands for HRM, use the abbreviation HRM throughout. So yeah, you've answered the question. That's one of the things that's wrong. Two participants have raised their hands. So Karen, yes, spot on. Once you've declared, start using the declaration. Floyd, you've got your hand up.
Sure, Prof. Just wasn't sure. I think it's mostly to do with like the referencing. I mean, there by Blom, Kurian, Van Heerding, and Van Til.
Yeah,
I think it's just the inconsistency of that, because, like I say, below, then they put Blom et al.
Yeah,
and then further on. So I think it's mostly, like you say, the referencing style.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Good pointer. Okay. Let me show you. You'll be fascinated. So here are my, and that's where we ought to be going when we are reading. Just because it's in black and white, it doesn't make everything correct. What we ought to be doing is also looking at where points of improvements can be picked up. And I like it when we pick up points of improvement. So the declaration, yes, Karen, you're spot on. They should use the abbreviation HRM. But here's another one. The idea could be developed further. And I'm not a fan of starting a sentence with it. Okay? It has been established, but it's fine. The idea that they've built up in the first sentence could be developed much further, and they haven't done it. They've done it in the first paragraph where the ideas were flowing, but they haven't done it in this one. But therefore, then look at therefore. They talk about therefore, maybe unpack. What do you mean by therefore? Because it's more evaluative. But remember, they look to be more following what they've done in the first part, okay? Allow for some variety and variation in how you're expressing the ideas that you're working with. And for me, that also is a concern. That is a concern because the first paragraph is so wholesome. The second one starts to have little gaps here and there, which can easily be picked up to say, okay, this could be better, this could be improved in one way or the other. Let's go to another one. Let's go to the second point. Introduction is an opportunity to point clarifications. I love this paper by Muhammad Musa in the journal Employee Relations. Now, what I picked up from this one here is that Muhammad here tries to use the introduction as a way of illustrating clarifications. Look at the first line. Over the past decade, the concept workplace fun has gained momentum. Okay, so what do? They're making a point about time. They clarify the decade part. And what do they do in the next line? They clarify the concept that they are working with, which is the concept of fun or workplace fun. And what do they do in the next line? Look at what they do. They also ignite interest. The concept has recently attracted researchers. Recently attracted. Okay, so if something is attracting attention, it's something that we are saying, you know what, we need to be looking at this, because this is where everybody is focused upon, or this is where the talking point is, or this is where the focus of our argumentation should be. And for me, that then becomes so fascinating, because what he then does in the next line, look at what he does. This concept has recently attracted researchers from disciplines such as organizational psychology, public policy, economics. And so remember the burdening. You don't want to put too much burden. At the same time, you want to balance it, okay? I know people who like to put so much referencing because they want the referencing to be able to prove to the supervisor that, yeah, I've done enough work. You don't want to do it too much. At the same time, you also want it to show a little bit of credibility in what you are trying to do. And look at what he then does, Muhammad here, where authors have attempted, okay, he doesn't criticize, where authors have failed, okay, anything published in this case is an attempt, okay. I think an attempt is a much better way of trying to at least not pull down people, at least not over elevate people. And it does that respectfully and shows the sources there. And then look at the last line. This may be, and then what are they trying to do here? They are trying to establish possible reason as to why things are the way they are. This may be why we are thinking a certain way. I love this introduction, because this introduction illustrates what you can do with an introduction by showing the value of time, okay? It's not just about introducing concepts, but it's also about introducing the value that time can play in the ideas that you're working with. And they do it steadily by also showing where the strengths are or where the shortcomings are. Here is another one. Introductions are also a great way to ignite questions. This is Peace Kigua, Professor Peace Kigua, brilliant writer who writes a lot around the psychology and issues around decoloniality. Very interesting author who I believe responds to the times. And this is a commentary she wrote recently in the South African Journal of Psychology. Now, remember, look at the title, first of all. We can talk about titles on another day, particularly for journals. The house that apartheid built, what room for cohabitation? Powerful. You can actually see, oh, wow, this is very, very interesting. And initially, when I read this, I had to read it twice because it's also talking to some of the issues that happened recently in Phoenix with the killings and so forth. Now, check what she does. She chooses to start her introduction using questions, thoughtful, reflectful questions. What happens when people revolt against each other? Question. What ignites communities to bond together against another, or alternatively to bond together for the purpose of causing harm? Question. Whether it is in defense of property or loved ones or retaliation against perceived injury inflicted by the other. Question. It is a strange thing, this notion of a bond. So what she does is she takes the reader through these difficult questions that all of us are having, and then offers some form of critical reflection that even if it's on one side of the coin, this is what's happening. On the other side of the coin, this is what's happening. This thing called a bond that unites all of these ideas is a strange thing. I like what she also does on her title, because her title starts to make sense where she's going. But she puts words, the point in other words. In the words of Amartya Sen, 2006, the adversary of exclusion can be made to go hand in hand with the gift of inclusion. Powerful. You know, you want to read more, you want to read further because of the interest that is happening in the paragraph. The paragraph is not cluttered with ambiguity. The paragraph is not cluttered with ideas that are loose hanging. The paragraph is not cluttered with a sense that, oh, you know what, there's too much going on, or there's too little loose hanging threads here. The paragraph is perfectly structured that one can actually see what's happening. And she does this so beautifully well. You can read this article on the South African Journal of Psychology. It's just recently been published, and I think it's a response to the July problems that we had with the uprisings and so forth. But what it beautifully does, and at least in my view, it illustrates how paragraphs or introductions can also be supported through lines of questioning. Okay, remember, there are different ways of doing this. In a journal, it may be different. In a dissertation, it may be different, but you can actually see that the author has a little bit of leeway and room to be able to choose which of the platforms that best suits what they want to do. Okay, so here's another one. The introduction is meant to set the scene to the ongoing drama. Now, this is something I've done, and when I read it again and again, I actually think I could actually have done something better here. So this was a project with female pastors, why they choose to enter the preserve, sometimes in certain societies known to be a preserve of only for men. So I start by bringing drama into the introduction. There's a noted shift in society characterized often by women's entry, especially in careers that may traditionally be the domain of men. Full stop. Okay, so I present an observation, which is an observation I have seen and an observation which I've read about, and then the next line, importantly, has to support that observation. This shift may be responsible for challenging the old order of thinking. So there's an old order and there's a new order. Now the reader is also, okay, wow, there must be two polarizing ends. Tell us more. For instance, on one end, Cooper's 1995's values of strength, robustness, boldness, stoutness, bravery may be questioned as to their relevance to men alone. Women also can have strength. Women also can be robust. Women also can be bold. Women also can be stout. Women also can be brave. It's not only a preserve of men, and that's what I'm trying to challenge here. And some I provide the source, argue for the need to question the relevance in contemporary society of gender stereotyping, with their argument being for the need for inclusivity as is being performed in career paths in science and technology. Part of this process concerns exploring pay differences between women and men. I then now start picking one fruit from the tree and say, well, if you think I'm not talking to the issue, here is one fruit from this tree. So the process also entails understanding continually those barriers affecting the career development of minority groups such as women. So if you notice, like the first paper, the last sentence kind of gives it away what my research is going to be about. It kind of gives it away because it positions where I am going with my argument, or where I would like to take that argument. And then you can just see it in the second paragraph. So do you see how paragraphs logically building up to say the first paragraph tells us something, the next paragraph tells us something, but the second paragraph does not merely tell us what you've already covered elsewhere. The second paragraph is continuing the ideas that you would have presented. So here goes. In South Africa, there is noted work from scholars who explored the entry of women in sport, such as bodybuilding, and also ensuing opportunities from this. This entry of women into male-dominated areas may also potentially come with complexity, especially for women. The complexity here could involve how women deal with barriers that affect their progression. These challenges can be rooted especially in religious areas of operation and domains of operation. So what have I done here? In the first paragraph, I set the scene with the drama at a wider scale. And then I do what's known as the funnel approach. I then narrow that drama to particular context. And that's also a writing technique you could do as you write an introduction, to say, start from the general, narrowing it into something that you can work with the specific. And not always the best, but it comes in handy. Okay, we've got some hands. I think Floyd and Dr. Masha. Let's start with Dr. Masha, then we'll come to Floyd.
All right, Prof, I wanted you to look at the second paragraph where it says, in South Africa, there is noted work from scholars, blah, 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 up to opportunity, Kubisa and Reddy.
Yeah.
Is that statement from Kubisa and Reddy, or Kubisa and Reddy is the scholar?
Okay, so are you saying is the statement from Kubisa and Reddy, or is Kubisa and Reddy the scholar?
Is that scholar? Because there is noted work from scholars. I would have asked my students to put in brackets who these scholars are.
Okay, I get what you mean. In this case, okay, the statement about the noted work of scholars is from Kubisa and Reddy. So the other way of having to deal with that one is that you could have written all the scholars who are part of this cohort that you could work with. But you see what I was avoiding here, unlike the first one here. Okay, look at what happens here. You see, this one here, there's a lot of traffic going on here, because the municipal requires HRMs that are peculiar to the public sector environment. So what they've done is that they've listed all the studies, okay, that make this argument. Okay, in my case, I chose to do it the other way. I have listed the argument of there is noted work from scholars who are positioning the entry of women into sports such as bodybuilding. So it's a dual way of working at it. The concern, Dr. Masha, for me is this: think of yourself carrying a heavy load. I don't like it when I make a statement that I'm writing and then I put 10 references to that statement. Whereas
let me say tell you how I would have fine-tuned this statement.
Okay.
I would have said, it is acknowledged by Kubisa and Reddy, 2017.
Yeah.
Or blah, 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 on the work of scholars who have explored the entry of women in sport, such as bodybuilding, and ensuring opportunities. That's to tell you that Kubisa and Reddy has acknowledged that there are other scholars without listing the scholars.
Or you could cite the scholars a little bit later on, or the argument. Remember, it's an introduction. So you could cite the scholars a little bit later on, what the scholars say, which is perfectly fine as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think Floyd, you had your hand up.
Sorry, Prof. I think my thing was similar to Dr. Masha, like where you mentioned the scholars. So what happened if you had to say like from scholars such as or scholars in the field of the sporting things relating to women, like if you had to mention them first, and then also like he says, Kubisa and Reddy, they acknowledge these scholars as being more prevalent in this field. Like how can I word it? So if you had to like add, like you say, add more references there, but to donate it back to that sphere in a sense.
You could do that, but colleagues, here is the concern. Here is the concern. Remember, this is still the introduction. Okay, you still have a literature review to come a little bit later on. What we want? Remember here. Let's go back here. What we want to get the reader's attention. We want to present what we are trying to do. We want to connect with the audience, especially in the introduction. And we want to also, which is what you and Dr. Masha are talking about, Floyd, the logics of writing. We want all of that. We don't want to offend and miss others and prioritize others. But the crucial element that we mustn't forget is that this is an introduction. We don't want an introduction that is clogged up with information. We want an introduction that says, I want to read this paper further. I get where this paper is going. Oh, these are the contestations that are happening in the literature. Okay, all right, this is the argument that one side is making. This is the argument another side is making. All of this is making sense. Okay, let's take it further. Let's go further. You can present all those so many scholars and so forth a little bit later on, but the art here is the art of being concise and the art of being able to articulate your ideas without clogging the introduction, so that it's difficult for the reader to take you any further, to say, I want to go further and read this. Because sometimes when it's clogged up, people will then say, why should I read this? Why should I read this? Clearly, I'm getting lost right in the introduction in itself. Get to the point, clear out your message, the sooner the better. Dr. Masha, are you coming back, or is that an old hand?
Let me remove it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right. So let's look at another one. Okay, so this was an interesting one. This is now the common method that happens in thesis writing. This is a book project completed by Melinda Kotsia and colleagues, and the introduction also serves the opportunity to be able to pose the next agenda, not in terms of research, but the next agenda in terms of your work. Okay, so what Sabine Rader did in this article, the article is called, it's part of a book chapter, Psychological Contracts in the Era of HRM 4.0. She then writes an introduction, but she ends the introduction like so. The chapter discusses potential effects of HRM 4.0 on psychological contracts. First, the two attributes of HRM, blah, 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 and then, okay, finally, and then this is the most common way people adopt in thesis writing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's actually great because it tells us a map of what the chapter does. What a lot of people though miss is that this needs to be supported by some form of literature argumentation. Because for me to then know that the true attributes of standardization and reduced social interaction as part of HRM 4.0 will be discussed, it's a lot easier when I've had some form of context building up to what I want to achieve. So what we learn from this is that, colleagues, there is no one way of writing an introduction that is the best. Everybody has got their preference. Everybody has got their way based on how they are trained. What you will also learn as you write for different audiences is that don't trap yourself in one way of writing an introduction. And what I have presented to you here, ways of writing an introduction. Let's do it in summary points. First way is do all the necessary technical work. If there are abbreviations, declare them, okay? Do all the necessary technical work. If there are sentences that build and lead into each other, do so. Don't write loose hanging statements. Make sure as you write, ask yourself, what does this sentence say? And what does this sentence do to the next sentence? And how does this sentence help me improve in the arguments that I'm making? Here's another way. Make sure you buttress your argument. Don't overdo it and don't underdo it. Now, the question would be, what does overdoing it? You will know, okay? You cannot start an introduction by saying research in the field of information systems is very scant, and then you put 8 to 12 references there. Okay, you've made the point, yes. But you could actually say research in the field of information systems is scant, full stop. And then you could unpack in what way is this research scant based on those 8 to 12 references. So you do an analysis, if you like, of the literature that you are saying is supporting your argumentation. Make sure, ask yourself a question. So what? Okay, so I've written all these argumentations in the introduction. So what does it mean? Don't forget, remember what we said right at the start here, which I said is often missing. Yeah? Present your topic and the purpose, your voice. And a lot of people miss it. A lot of people try to, in the effort of trying to please whoever will be reading the work, they forget that the introduction is also a way of saying, well, there is a reason why I'm writing. And the reason I'm writing is because I also want to contribute. Somebody put it beautifully to me to say a literature review and an introduction and so forth. It's like friends sitting around a fire at night. And as they are sitting around a fire at night, they start to converse. But as they converse, please be reminded, it is a conversation, not a one-way dialogue where somebody is just dominating and hogging and cogging the entire limelight. It's about making sure that in as much as I acknowledge what others have done, where the gaps are, where the angles are, I must be able to have some form of voice, and my voice must be able to come out. Now, someone will ask a question, so does my voice have to be I, the researcher? It really differs with the context that you're writing in. I know of some journals where you are permitted to refer to yourself in the first person, or you're not permitted to do so in other journals. Find out what the stylistic rules are, but don't also forget to bring in the benefits or the gaps in which the work that you're building into seeks to cover. The second lesson that we can learn from all of this is the importance of also using other techniques in writing introductions. The technique which is illustrated in this paper here, it's the technique of time, okay? the technique of the epoch of time, I call it here, making sure that you praise what others have done, but you're also critical of the shortcomings that exist. So, for instance, in my PhD, I praised the work that has been done by seminal scholars in the field of industrial psychology and organizational behavior, who were purely rooted in pushing for the quantitative approach. But I then was also critical to say, in as much as this has aided advancing the field of psychology, particularly industrial psychology, some concerns can be noted. And one of the concerns that can be noted is the absence of giving voice to minority groups who were equally not recognized as part of the thinking that was happening in this particular field. So what am I playing with here? I am playing with time, the epoch of time, and I'm igniting interest into the literature review or the introduction based on the issue of time. What else did we learn? Well, we've also learned that there's the issue of questions. Introductions can also be guided by questions. Piski Gua does this so well. What happens when people revolt? And she asked some very sobering questions. She even, in case you missed it, she even provides an answer in a very sarcastic way. It is a strange thing, this notion of a bond. And so the reader is constantly engaged. The reader is interested in understanding what this paper is about, because the paper is making some interesting arguments that okay, I want to read this further. I never thought of that. Wow, that is so interesting. Oh, really? Wow, that's an important point. And that gets the reader always interested. She even dabs in a little bit of statistics as a point of trying to raise her argument. Fourth thing we've learned is the introduction also affords you, don't make it dull and boring. Within every literature, there is drama. Within every literature, there are contestations on polarizing ends. If it's in the strategy literature, some are followers of Henry Mintzberg and the learning approach. Some are followers of Ansoff, who are flying the flag of rationality. So bring those differing viewpoints. The drama cannot just be if it's an information system, sometimes it's which theory is the best to explain acceptance. Is it the theory of reasoned action? Is it the technology acceptance model? Is it the UTOUT? Okay, there will always be all of these polarizing fields, and a good way of introducing the polarization, the idea is really not the polarization, is to bring those issues, even points that you don't like, you can bring them there, and even if it's a point that you're speaking against, at least acknowledge that it exists, and you're going to say, okay, I may not agree with this, but I acknowledge it exists. Because I acknowledge it exists, I want to give it a little bit of volume and latitude of its own, and then I'll bring my viewpoint. And then finally, the traditional way, okay, in as much as you bring your view, but don't forget to use the introduction as a way of proposing where
Prof, I think you're muted today.
Yeah, you see, I was talking to myself. Sorry, thanks, Floyd. Any questions about introductions? That was the first part of the presentation. Anybody would like to ask anything or any tips you'd like to share on how you are dealing with introductions? Siviwe?
Yes, Prof. I just wanted to know how important is the positioning of the reference when you reference the scholar. For example, if you go back to your introduction, there was a part where you said it is worth noting, whereas you cite the argument or the view of a certain scholar, but you background it or you foreground it. I just want to understand how important it is to foreground when you cite and backgrounding when you cite a certain scholar too.
Yeah, I think we kind of exchanged a little bit there with Dr. Marsha, and my understanding there and my thinking is do it with balance. I prefer the school of thought that says writing so many sources does not make your argument come across well, okay? But it is acknowledging at least the crucial sources that could help in that argumentation. So I've got students, particularly when students are starting off at honors level, what they are often tempted to do is to pump, and I use that word, yes, pump the literature or the submission with lots of references, okay? Because that's what they've been taught, that references prove credibility. But I think what's also crucial is that if you can find one reference that kind of ties in the argument of what you're trying to make, this is what I do. I prefer not burdening the reader. Remember the burdening argument that I make, that all researchers, okay, we know you can reference, but rather not overburden, but put a little bit of weight in an argument that you're making, and so that your argument does not get lost in the myriad of references and sources that people place on a particular topic.
Okay, I get you, Prof. But then with the positioning of whether you end with the reference or you start with the reference, is there a difference?
Oh no, that's a technical issue. That depends with how you write. I think the only thing that is not that I would not recommend is starting a sentence by saying Marsha et al. 2015 argue that. Okay, it's a preference thing. I know if you were to publish in a journal such as Journal of Vocational Behavior, they would not even send it for review because of the positioning. So variety counts. So have a look at this one. So this one, we've written it at the end. Okay, we could have even done it the other way. Kubisa and Reddy. And then put the sentence at the beginning. What I have learned in as a matter of preference, the most dangerous one is starting a sentence with et al. Kubisa et al. Argue that. I prefer that if it's an et al. Source, rather put it at the end. If it's two authors that you can easily say Kubisa and so argue the following, it's a lot easy. But it also depends with the technical detail. I think currently we are on the latest APA style that we use for our department, and so we we no longer like for instance, have a look at this one. This would have been roasted. Have a look at this one. Yeah, look at this is employee relations. And I think they are using the latest APA, and the latest APA, you don't cite all the authors. So look at the Carl reference, okay? The Carl reference is Carl et al. But if you go here, South African Journal, they will put all the authors there. So the version they are using, I think they're probably on 7 or 6, which is totally different. So familiarize yourself with whatever style guide that is required by your institution. I hope that helps, Sivue.
Yes, it does, Prof. Thanks.
Okay. Karen and Tony, to Dr. Marsha, I'm going to pause you a bit. I want to open it up to others. Surely there are other people, and I know you guys from the research group we're in. So let me just try and take other hands. Anyone else besides Dr. Marsha and Karen? Okay. Manuel, welcome.
Yes, thank you, Prof. If you remember from MSU.
Yes, Manuel, I remember you very well.
Thank you. I want to refer to that statement where you said there are many references here instead of just saying et al. I'm looking for the page. I've lost the page here. But I wanted to say on that one, can you see that some papers are for 2017, some papers are for 2015, and some papers are for the other year?
Yes.
So in that case, yeah, we could not say et al. Because those authors, they did not all write one paper.
Okay, which one are we talking about, Manuel? The which page is it? This one, or is it this one? Is it this one?
This one, where it is saying that one, the other one,
the other one before.
The other one, yes, this one.
Okay.
So where you are changing it again?
So I'm changing it. Okay. So tell me, is it this one or should I go to the next one?
The next one.
This one.
Number 3, Prof.
Number 3, yeah.
Where there were some, now I'm lost, guys. Where there were some authors where there were about 3 papers: the 2020, the 2015, and the 2017. Where you had just noted, where you had just said, look at these guys, instead of just saying it
Your
out.
paper, Prof, I think.
It's my paper, eh? Okay.
Yes, your paper.
Okay.
Not this one. Not this one.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Manuel, we've got 5 of them, right? Let's start here. This is number 5. Is it number 5? Yes or no?
Not this one, right?
We've got number 4.
Okay. Let it come. This one, not this one, right?
Okay, we've got number 3.
Not this one.
We've got number 2.
Not this one.
So it has to be this one then. This is the only one. This is number 1.
Yes, this one. This one.
Okay, all right.
Where they are saying the municipal context requires HRM that is peculiar to the public sector environment, and then Bloom and Kenya, they are 2020, right?
Yes.
And Govenda, it's 17.
Yes.
And then both they are 2015.
Yes.
So if I had correct, you were saying, you look at these guys, they decided to put all authors instead of saying et al. Did I get you correct?
No. That's not what I meant. Okay, so let's first clarify the et al. Rule. Et al. Simply means and others, right? And other authors. Okay, so the latest version of APA. Okay, APA, American Psychological Association, is a referencing technique. Here are 2 examples of 2 journals that use APA. The first journal, a South African journal, is this journal, Manual, South African Journal of Human Resources, okay? The second journal is this journal, Employee Relations. Both of them are used, well, this is not APA because it's already, okay, it's not APA, but the difference between APA has got versions. The latest version of APA, okay, would have required where Bloom is. You don't have to write all the other authors. you could have just said Bloom et al. That's the latest version that we are using. But this journal, the South African Journal of Human Resources Management, is still using version 7, which is fine, of APA. That's what I was just saying. So there's nothing wrong with what they've done here. It's only that the version being used here is version 7. My students know very well who are here that we are using version 8. And when we're referencing an article with 3 authors like this, we don't have to write all the names of the authors. We'll just use Bloom et al. But when you're in Rome, you do what the Romans do. If I come to your house, it is not my duty to say to you, why do you only watch Arsenal Fan TV? Why can't you also watch Liverpool? It's none of my business. I jump according to how the rules of your house operate. So this is just the issue with the technical style guides.
No, it's okay. I got it,
Okay.
Prof. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Manuel. I don't want Tony and Dr. Marsha and Karen, please, other people, before we move on to the conclusion part. Ray, welcome. Ray Mnangwa.
Yes, Prof, how are you? Long time.
Long time, Ray. Great to see you and to hear you.
Thank you. But mine is a very brief question. Prof, how long should...
How long should an introduction? Let me throw it out to the group, guys. How long should an introduction be?
Can I come in, Prof?
I've got very esteemed colleagues here. Dr. Adrino, welcome. How long should an introduction be?
Can I come in, Prof?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Asha. I'm a student. I would like to believe that an introduction must be as precise as possible.
Okay.
So it must not be very long and it must not be very short at the same time. I will speak of the miniskirt concept.
I don't want you to go there, please. Don't go there. I don't like that example.
I'll not.
And the reason I don't like that example, it is very offensive, that example. So I've heard that example. So, okay. Dr. Adrino, welcome. I would love to hear from you. How long should an introduction be? Sorry to put you on the spotlight. Okay. All right. Okay, let me throw it out. Anybody, how long should an introduction be? Oh, guys.
Prof, I think it depends on what you're writing, really.
It depends on what you're writing, okay?
Because, yeah, for a thesis, we know it needs to be something like a page or something like that. But I think for a report, it would be shorter and all of that.
Okay, I don't want to be prescriptive. I just think be guided, like Karen has said, what you are writing is critical, but also be guided by, that's why you've got mentors and supervisors to be able to assist. Yeah, it really depends on what you're writing. But let it not be one sentence, or 2 sentences. Let it be wholesome enough. Dr. Uzungunde, how long should an introduction be?
Hello, Prof. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Doc.
All right, thank you. I think what you mentioned just now, like it's not good to be prescriptive when it comes to the introduction, but mainly what matters is what you were just explaining. The importance of what should be in the introduction is what should be at the forefront of someone's mind first, and then you go to look at what it is that you're doing. Is it an article? Is it a thesis? Then from there, the preciseness should now come. I'm sure, I think it should be logic enough, maybe not more than a page or a page and a half, depending on what you're writing for. But it's not something that is prescriptive. Basically, what should be in an introduction is what should matter. The preciseness should guide.
Yeah, and that's one question I always hate when students ask me, how long is this? How long should my literature review be? How long should the methodology be? How long? I think, let's not play to the numbers, but be guided also by what you're doing and what you're writing. Ray, I think, are you coming back? I think your hand is still up.
I was going to say that quite most of the answers are a bit diplomatic, but I accept them. So I remove my hand.
Okay. On that diplomacy note, that's fine. Any other questions or comments, and then we go into the bit. But let's also take home from this. Is there anything anybody has learned that they would like to try? By the way, when I was showing you these things, take time to also read people's work. You know, there's this thing that is happening these days because, and I blame the internet generation we're living in, people don't take time to read other people's work critically. I know people who sit and say, I'm downloading articles for my literature review, then they download 150 articles. They've got 150 articles. They don't even read them, but they are into the business of saying, I've got the articles. So the exercise that we were doing with the introductions also helps you to find areas or things that you can work with to improve how you write as well. Okay, any comments? Then we now go to conclusions now. And the nice part about the next part is it's a conclusion, so it's going to be short. Conclusions need to be short, to the point. Okay, all right. So the last part, I have to show you this because that is the cycle of the research, the funnel of research. Some of you know it very well. Whereas the introduction introduced the scene, the conclusion closes the scene. Okay, I need to say something. Usually, if it's a paper, a journal article, if it's a thesis, a dissertation, this chapter is usually the last to be written because of the order. You can see from the order, the discussion. So what I'm going to try and do is to cover the two, the discussion and the conclusion. Here is my observation. The energy levels when we start, they are high. You see the one here, energy will be so high. As we go on, the energy level starts to lower, okay? But something happens at 4. At 4, it's nice because we start to change the direction. Your supervisor says, okay, you've done enough literature chapters, reading and so forth. Now we're going to do the actual data collection. So the energy levels go up again because we're collecting data. And then the energy level starts to lower down again, okay? And usually, by the time we get to the conclusion, we are tired. We are just wanting this thing to get off our backs. If it's a thesis, master's, PhD. I have one student of mine who is here, Nokwanda, who beautifully now the results are here. All now Nokwanda has to do is to write the discussion and the conclusion. And she's tired because she just wants it over. So I often say, try to be in a right frame of mind as you write the conclusion, okay? If you're finding that you can't work for, because sometimes there's this misnomer to think I can work 5 hours, then I'm productive. If you can actually say to yourself, let me just do 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the afternoon until the energy levels start to pick up. But it is crucial that we end this thing very well. Somebody's called it landing the plane very well. It's nice that we took off at OR Tambo Airport and now we are cruising and, enjoying, and now the plane must come to a landing. The plane must land. And the place where the plane lands is in the discussion and conclusion sections. I don't know how far true this is, and I'm not saying this is the reality, but I've heard people tell me stories such as some examiners, they like to, before they examine, they like to read the introduction and then they glot through the results and they go to the discussion and the conclusion, and they don't do a thorough read obviously afterwards, but just to try and gauge and get a picture of what's going on. So the most important thing we must acknowledge as scholars, that this is the crucial part. And this is crucial because you've done the hard work of finding out what the literature says. You've done the hard work of conducting the research. Now you must do the work of linking the work that you want to do. Here's a few suggestions on how we can land the plane in terms of a little bit of a structure I like to follow. And this is what I promised my student, Nokwanda, who's here, to say this is basically the summary of what we want. Remember, you're tired. So what you can do is to say, my deadline is in 6 weeks' time. I need to finish this maybe in 2 weeks. So maybe if I dedicate a day to each of these sections, or 2 hours a day to at least one of these sections, okay? Not the sitting through. You can if you're motivated, but I find myself tired. So ask yourself some crucial things. These are the 5 most important things we try to encourage when we're concluding and seeking to land the plane. The discussion itself. The first sentence, some people, and I've observed it as a pattern, the first sentence of the discussion section should remind us what the aim of the research was. The aim of the research, and if you like, it could be a repetition of what you've already covered. Remind us, what did your research seek to do? And then after you've done that, depending on the number of findings that you have, and then for the qualitative guys, this is the painful part because it involves a lot of work. If you are doing quants, it's easy a little bit because you've got at least a set of hypotheses that are either supported or rejected. But take each finding of your research. So one of the findings of the research was that decent work has a positive relationship with job performance. That's a finding from the research. Perfect. What I then do, I then say, based on this finding of the research, I must offer discussion. The discussion must be linked to the literature, and depending on, and acknowledge there are people from different faculties and disciplines. I always try to say this to my students: only work with the literature that you have covered in your literature review section. And my supervisor used to say this to me: no new literature in the discussion section. Because once you start entertaining new literature in the discussion section, what starts to happen is that you may fall into the trap of starting to even proposing a new avenue of research which you are not doing. So by assumption, by the time you've covered all this literature and the discussion has now come through, you are now discussing the literature and the findings that you have presented. So start asking yourself some questions of interrogation. Based on the findings, what are the possible explanations of my findings to the literature that I have presented? And here's another little tip. If you find that one PhD student wrote to me and said, Prof, I'm going to delay sending you my discussion chapter. I said, why? He says, well, when I was looking at the results, I figured out that maybe there's some literature that I may not have covered. I may need to go and consult so that I patch it up a little bit. And that's the nice part about this chapter. It's revealing because it can actually tell you, in some cases, where some weaknesses exist and where you need to improve. So the first thing that we ought to be doing is making sure that our discussion is in line, not just with the findings, but also with the literature that we have presented. Some tributes can be done here. Where is your research similar to this literature? Don't be afraid to also parade that your findings had some similarity. But also don't be afraid to also parade that your findings had some areas of uniqueness and difference. And this is also true because sometimes a student is told or finds out through a statistician's report to say your hypothesis 4, 3, and 7 were not supported. And then they are worried to say, but if they were not supported, does that mean that my research is not accurate? No. And no finding is a finding. But that no finding needs to be put into the context of the discussion that we are encouraging you to work. So the discussion is looking at each and every one of the findings, even the findings that are, if it was quants, not popular or not expected, these must also be discussed. And where is the rule of this? Well, look at it from what are the possible explanations? Where is the research similar? Where is the research different? The other thing that we can look at, which is crucial, is the contribution. Don't shy away from making contributions of your research to say, this research had the following contributions. I always say to my students, think 3 contributions. Maybe there could be 4. You could open it up and people could share. Number 1, what is the theoretical contribution? Remember, much of the academic project is also based upon the logic of research and the theoretical contributions. Are you adding anything new to the theoretical body of literature? If so, what is it that you're adding? Is there a model that emerges from your work that exists as a model that could be a framework? What theoretical contribution is there? And the theoretical contribution, depending on the levels at which you are studying, could also be a confirmation of a particular theory. To say the findings of this work confirm the theory of planned behavior. Okay, at master's honors level, that's acceptable. At PhD level, we expect you to be talking big stuff in terms of a contribution to new knowledge. That can be a workshop on its own. What does a PhD contribution entail? The second contribution is a practitioner contribution. This is where we as academics often fail. We talk to ourselves. We don't talk to the people or the context that our research is based upon. So if you're working on research on decent work within the public service, based on the findings of your research, what can an HR department in Bisho, our government legislature, they do with the findings of your research to improve job performance or the way public servants work? This is what we call a practitioner contribution. A practitioner could be managers, could be people who are working in that field, a mistake somebody once made, okay? And I knew that this is a problem because they were not speaking to their research. Their research was looking at employability amongst final year students. And then they had a section in the thesis called managerial implications. And then I went and asked, but why would you have a section called managerial implications when you are not focusing on managers, but you were focusing on students? They couldn't answer. And I said, well, put simply, you can change that to say, unless you are working at making implications with managers who work in that space, okay, where they are trying to encourage student employability, then you could do that. So be aware, ask yourself a question: who is the practitioner that is likely to benefit from the contribution of this research? Finally, another area where we are weak is the policy contribution. In fact, one of the things that we should get away with from this session is, as we go and do research, let us ask ourselves, where does our research fit in with regard to the range of policy imperatives that exist? Policy imperatives, what are we talking about? The Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, I play around with Sustainable Development Goal number 8, decent work and economic growth. Don't be ashamed of saying, you know, in view of that policy imperative, this research fits to aid that contribution. Policy imperatives are also in sectors of the economy. Policy imperatives, the African Union has got policy imperatives, SADC has got policy imperatives, okay? So ask yourself, where would my research contribute to those policy imperatives? The third thing, as we conclude our write-up, are limitations. Please, 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 don't be ashamed to also acknowledge the limitations. I'm writing an article right now where we've received a first round of review, and the reviewer wrote back to say, one of the shortcomings of your work is how your work is using self-reported measures of measuring performance. And they're right. Because if I were to write to you and give you a questionnaire to say, what are you having for supper tonight? Some of you would say, but no, I don't want Prof to know that I'm eating A, B, C, and D. So you could then give, well, Prof, we are having, I don't know, squid with, you know, just make it look fancy so that you get self-reported measures of saying, okay, wow, they're having squid, that's nice. So I have to acknowledge that. I have to acknowledge that as a researcher, no research is 100% perfect, okay? What I wouldn't recommend you do is don't write 3 contributions of your research and then you write 15 limitations. You're shooting yourself in the foot. Acknowledge at least a range of limitations with your research, but also be frank and acknowledge future areas of your research to say, based on the findings of this research, the following could be recommended. I often say, if you've done a quantitative study, be honest also to acknowledge that there is room for the need of a qualitative study, because a qualitative study will help open up and usher in a new way of understanding around complexity and ensuing dynamics that may not be captured with quantitative methods. So identify also areas for future research. They could be methodological, they could be conceptual, they could also be even in changing the targeted samples that you may have worked with. So if you were working with employees, just say, well, it would be interesting to conduct the same research with managers. Finally, the conclusion itself. The conclusion is really the chapter where you say, or the chapter, the paragraph or two, where you then tie up loose ends to say, this is the necessity of this research, praise what the research has done, and also open up the research to future angles in which scrutiny can happen. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is how you conclude, be it a journal article, be it a dissertation, but what features predominantly in this section should be your voice and how it helps, or how your research has helped in advancing knowledge, or knowledge as we come to know it. Those that have just joined us, in the chat box, you will find I have put a link with the slides, so you can also download the slides there and follow from that end. Are there any questions or comments, especially on the conclusion? Or anything anybody would like to add that will help them in writing conclusions? Okay, I see no hands. I'm assuming it's clear. Dr. Marsha, anything you would like to add on conclusions?
Before Dr. Marsha, Prof, I can't
Yes,
see anything
hold
the
on. I
chat.
want to see who you are. This is Tandokazi. Yes, Tandokazi.
Yes, Prof. I can't see anything on the chat. The link to the slides.
Okay. Or maybe because we. Okay. Don't worry. What I will do is. Okay. Floyd, help me out here. What should I do? Should I read
I've
you?
also just also resubmitted your presentation now on the chat.
Thanks, Floyd.
I sent another link now.
Yes. Okay. Try again, Tandokazi. It should be there. If you struggle, yeah, drop me an email. If you struggle to get it, guys, just drop me an email. My email is on the. I'll put it in the chat box as well. Dr. Marsha, conclusions. Oh, yes, he left.
I'm okay, thank you.
You're okay on that one. Okay.
I was told that in the conclusion, try not to put references.
In the paragraph of the conclusion itself, not the discussion and all that. The discussion, we expect references.
Yeah, conclusion itself.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I also agree that paragraph where you conclude, keep it reference free if you like. Again, let's not be prescriptive. Some people do put, others don't, but it's perfectly fine. Yeah. Okay, I want to end it there. Any other comments or questions in general of what we have covered in this session? Okay, no questions or comments. I'm gonna get in trouble for doing this, but I want to put someone on the spotlight. Many of you have asked. I've got a twin brother. He has just joined me in this lecture. So I'll ask my twin brother to just say hello to everybody. Can we pin you? There we go.
Hello. I was supposed to surprise you, but yeah, I think I should have hit the name. Hello, everyone. Yeah, nice to meet you guys.
Thanks a lot. This is the first time my twin brother has attended one of my lectures, so I am obviously over the moon and looking forward to his feedback a little bit later on. There's a question, I think, V, you asked a question. Go, just unmute and ask your question.
Okay, Prof, good evening. I'm trying to ask, how long are we expecting to for a conclusion to be?
V, who's your PhD supervisor?
It's you.
And what does your PhD supervisor say about how long something should be?
Prof, we haven't talked about that one.
Okay, again, let's not be prescriptive. You say depending on the level. If you're going for a PhD and you're writing a discussion chapter, guys, go all out. Please go all out, because remember, the outcome of what a PhD is, it is a contribution that brings understanding, new knowledge, basically. You're not telling us what we already know. You're adding to the body of knowledge, new knowledge. So think of the enormous weight. You've been invited by President Cyril Ramaphosa for dinner. Would you go rocking up your slippers, mpumzi, maseti, or with your, you dress the part, you look the part. So think of that as the enormous weight. Again, I don't want to be prescriptive over how long something should be, but really the NQF level 10, there, PhD, we expect content there, because your examiner is expecting a contribution to new knowledge. So again, not going to answer that one. Just try and go all out and cover all the necessities that are needed there. Okay, any other comments or questions before we thank everybody for attending? Okay, if there are no
sorry, Prof.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not a question, Prof.
Yes, no wonder.
Yes, like I would really appreciate the session. Very helpful and informative. I have taken notes for the conclusion and everything that goes with it. I'm sure I will what I will submit will be closer to really what is required. It's just on the introduction. I'm hoping I'm on the right track right there. Okay. In terms of the relevance and everything that we've talked about, Prof. Otherwise, just wish to thank you. This is very helpful. Thank you. Like you are right. We are tired, but I think this session is really kickstarting the whole thing. Like that, I must just go and do some work now before I forget.
Perfect. Nokwanda is one of my MBA students who has now finished collecting data. Data has now been analyzed. She's now writing the final chapter. So I hope, Nokwanda, the energy levels from this session just goes out of the roof, and then you write it and you enjoy your summer break knowing that this thing is now with the examiner. Thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us. Next month, I've got a workshop I want to do on qualitative research, particularly the differences between narrative analysis, thematic analysis, and all other qualitative analysis that exists. So those that are qual in nature, watch out for that one. But thanks a lot for joining. The video will be available you just Google my name on YouTube. On YouTube you will see the video with the slides. You can write send me an email. I'll be able to assist you. Thanks a lot for joining us. Please stay safe and see you next month.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Prof. Bye.
Bye.